This for the word of prayer.
Hallelujah. Heavenly Father, we just thank you, Lord. We thank you, Lord, for your grace, your mercy, God. Your patience towards us, God. Your anointing towards us, God. Lord, allow us, God, to come into your presence today, God, with clean hands and a clean heart, God. Allow our hearts to be open, Lord, to this word, Lord. Open up this word to us, God, and all these Sunday school teachers, God. Break up the fallow ground in our hearts, God. Allow these seeds of truth, Lord, to be rooted deep into our lives. In Jesus' name.
All right, thank you. All right, so everyone had a good week, hopefully. Start of a new week, right? A little hot out, that's fine. That's summer for us. Have a little entertaining story. It doesn't look as bad now, but I was thinking the elephant in the room, since you're all looking at me, would be this big scar or big bump on my head. But that's gone down. But we were out. Karen was going to play golf with a colleague on Friday, and she hadn't swung a club or anything yet. So we're like, oh, let's go to the driving range, I'll have a good time. So we brought the kids, too. We're like, I'm not going to stick an iPad in front of them. They're outside. Let's play golf or whatever. So I bent down to get some golf balls for Jaden because he had hit some off to the side, and he didn't know I was there. And I took a driver right to the head. So I was bending over, some blood's coming. I was like, oh, I think we got a little problem here. And but we put a little ice on it, some napkins, clotted right up. Had a few more balls to hit, so I finished out my bucket, and we were good to go. So, but yeah, Jaden was more traumatized than anyone probably. But I said, no, it was Daddy's fault. It was fine. You didn't do anything wrong. Because he's like, oh, I'll never play golf again. I'm like, oh, come on, It's like Tiger Woods started at 3 or 4, so we figured we'll give it a shot, right? So, but anyways, so it's kind of entertaining. But it's at least, it was real bad on Wednesday night, but it's gone away, so that's good. But anyways, I told Brother Bud next week I'll be on vacation, so I don't know if he's mentioned that to anyone yet, or he's taking it on himself, or I'm hoping that I'll have maybe just 1 week left, so I don't know, I wouldn't want someone necessarily to finish that next week. So I don't know, maybe just do coffee and donuts out back as an adult fellowship. I don't know, whatever. I don't know. I'll just throw it out there. Just throw it out there. But we'll see how far we get this week. All right, so my computer stopped working this morning, so that was awesome. So all my notes I was starting from scratch, but that's fine. So I think we are kind of around verse 13, so I'm just going to pick it up at verse 13, and we'll just go from there. So I may be shuffling around a little more than normal, but we'll make it work. So Proverbs 25 and 13. As the cold of snow in the time of harvest, so is a faithful messenger to them that send him, for he refreshes the soul of his masters. An unfaithful messenger can distort the message, give it to the wrong one, or not deliver it at all. But the faithful messenger is not false to his duty in any way, and so he refreshes the soul of those whom he serves. And I have kind of a little commentary. How few of the modern ministers of God are faithful messengers today? Multitudes have been given false hopes by those who are careless about their duty. They don't fully grasp what that is. Let's see, what else do I have? And so in a note going along with that, the more important the affair was, or the message that wanted to be carried out, the more fear of this miscarrying, or, so it has heavy weight to it. So there's more fear of this being misconstrued or given the wrong message carried through. So the more acceptable is the messenger if he's actually done it successfully and done it well, right? He's done it pleasing in God's sight. And 2 Corinthians 2:15 says, how we will be a sweet savor of God to do so the way that it should be carried out, not negatively. So another note I had. So to take it kind of a step further, that last part there about carrying it out and doing it successfully kind of reminds me of the verse of if you can be faithful to little things and prove yourself, then you'll be faithful with the greater things with much better, right? So it's really all up to the messenger and how something's gonna get delivered. But the key there is being that you have to prove yourself in it, right? And we could draw parallels so much to that nowadays, right? All this generational talk and everything I hear all the time, millennials, they can't wait, they don't want to pay their dues. It's, give me the 100K right off the bat, give me the title, give me all this stuff. But it just doesn't work that way. In some companies, maybe it does because their idea is keep people happy. So just throw them the money. I know we kind of talked about that a couple weeks ago too. But it really still is a matter of proving yourself. That's really what it boils down to. And then it's a matter of your own character too, right? You should want to prove yourself, not just have things handed to you. I mean, how do you learn from that? But it's a difficult thing in this, instantaneous age that we're in. It's a tough struggle. And we can get sucked into it pretty easily. So also in this verse 13, they're referring to ministers specifically, whether that wants to be pastors. That's the way I kind of interpret it. But I also tried to think of this a little differently in terms of people who are prophets, right? And being a prophet, how important is that to actually truly hear from the Lord on what's being brought forth? I mean, how much more of a burden? I mean, a pastor certainly is operating in a different realm in terms of they want to bring forth a word that they've searched out in the Bible. And pastor always says, if you don't believe me, go prove it out yourself, right? Go find that out yourself. But you think of a prophet, how a prophet operates. They're truly hearing from the Lord on a word, right? They're bringing this forth. They're not reading it in the Bible. They may refer to a verse, but they're hearing from the Lord on something. So to bring that through and deliver it incorrectly, how are you? This was mentioned a couple of verses ago in this chapter. If you bring a false word forth, then who's going to believe you? You're going to be considered a false prophet? So I consider, the burden of a pastor is very heavy, but also I think if someone who operates in the gift of prophecy, how much heavier of a burden is that? And I can only imagine someone, I certainly don't operate in that gift or at this point, but how much debate goes on with someone like that, right? Is this the timing? Am I really hearing? What's the person going to think? I mean, just think about, put yourself in those shoes a little bit. That seems like a very difficult thing. So that was kind of, to take it a little step farther, that was kind of resonating with me with this particular verse. Let's see. And then this verse, it does dovetail nicely into verse 14. So we'll move on to that now. So verse 14. Whoso boasteth himself of a false gift is like clouds and wind without rain. So the false gift means the promise of a gift which is never given, and so only frustrates the one to whom it is promised. Farmers know how frustrating it is to see clouds form and winds blow, but no rain fall upon the parched and dry earth. Right? You think of that right now, right? I mean, you drive by all these lawns and everyone, we're just totally like in a drought situation. And, we're out Friday night and you see clouds everywhere and you're thinking you're going to get poured on. But it's like, the next town over got poured on and they got all their rain, but you got nothing. So it's like, you think, oh yeah, maybe we're finally going to get rain and don't have to can turn the sprinklers off finally or whatever, not run the well dry. But sometimes it just doesn't materialize that way. And then backing up, as these kind of work together, right in connection with verse 13, this may refer to false promises which false teachers can make, which always leaves the hearers disappointed and frustrated and skeptical of all who claim to be God's messengers. And then a little side note, Satan still discredits true messengers with counterfeits, right? Have to be weary of those. Let's see. He may be said to boast of a false gift, who pretends to have received or given that which he never had, which he never gave, makes a noise of his great accomplishments and his good services, but it is all false. He who is not what he pretends to be, who promises what he will give and what he will do, but performs nothing, who raises people's expectations of the mighty things he will do for his country, for his friends, what noble legacies he will leave, but either he has not wherewithal to do what he says, or he never designs it. Such a one is like the morning cloud that passes away and disappoints those who looked for rain from it to water the parched ground, clouds without water. So yeah, clouds and wind ordinarily bring rain. To expect rain and not have it come is very disappointing. We see that someone who promises a gift and then doesn't give it at all is very disappointing as well. I'm sure there's a lot of instances where, or maybe not a lot, we can probably all think about that in our lives in one way or another. Maybe not so much even in the church, but just in our own personal lives of people that we know, whether it's friends or family or that sort of thing. And I'm sure we can all understand how disappointing something like that would be. Let's see. So, Proverbs, verse 15 now. By long forbearing is a prince persuaded, and a soft tongue breaketh the bone. So princes who exercise great power are nonetheless capable of being persuaded. But it is not so much by power, but by patience, in the little boneless member, the tongue, right? The tongue doesn't have a bone in it. By mildness, it's able to break the bones. This is a seeming contradiction, but much spiritual truth is paradoxical. It is a common error that the shortest road to peace is to howl with the wolves and give back curse for curse. Couple examples here. 1 Samuel 24, 9 through 16. Okay. And David said to Saul, Wherefore hearest thou men's words, saying, Behold, David seeketh thy hurt? Behold, this day thine eyes have seen how the Lord had delivered thee today into mine hand in the cave. And some bade me kill thee, but mine eyes spared thee. And I said, I will not put forth mine hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed. Moreover, my father, see the skirt of thy robe in my hand, for in that I cut off the skirt of thy robe, and killed thee not. Now thou and see that there is neither evil nor transgression in mine hand, and I have not sinned against thee. Yet thou huntest my soul to take it. The Lord judge between me and thee, and the Lord avenge me of thee. But mine hand shall not be upon thee. As saith the proverb of the ancients, Wickedness proceedeth from the wicked, but mine hand shall not be upon thee. After whom is the king of Israel come out? After whom dost thou pursue? After a dead dog, after a flea. The Lord therefore be judge, and judge between me and thee, and see and plead my cause, and deliver me out of thine hand. And it came to pass, when David had made an end of speaking these words unto Saul, that Saul said, Is thy voice my son David? And Saul lifted up his voice and wept. So David was kind of lessening the anger, the agitation of Saul in that situation. And another example is Abigail with David's wrath against Nabal. And that's also in 1 Samuel 25, 23 through 33. And when Abigail saw David, she hasted and lighted off the ass and fell before David on her face and bowed herself to the ground and fell at his feet and said, Upon me, my Lord, upon me let this iniquity be, and let thine handmaid, I pray thee, speak in thine audience, and hear the words of thine handmaid. Let not my Lord, I pray thee, regard this man of Belial, even Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, thine handmaid, saw not the young men of my Lord, whom thou didst send. Now therefore, my Lord, as the Lord liveth, and as thou soul liveth, seeing the Lord hath withholden thee from coming to shed blood, and from avenging thyself with thine own hand, now let thine enemies and they that seek evil to my Lord be as Nabal. And now this blessing which thine handmaid hath brought unto my Lord, let it even be given unto the young men that follow my Lord. I pray thee, forgive the trespass of thine handmaid, for the Lord will certainly make my Lord a sure house, because my Lord fighteth the battles of the Lord, and evil hath not been found in all thy days. Yet a man is risen to pursue thee and to seek thy soul. But the soul of my Lord shall be bound in the bundle of life with the Lord of thy God. And the souls of thine enemies, them shall he sling out, as out of the middle of a sling. And it shall come to pass, when the Lord shall have done to my Lord according to all the good that he hath spoken concerning thee, and shall have appointed thee ruler over Israel, that this shall be no grief unto thee, nor offense of heart unto my Lord, either that thou hast shed blood costless, or that my Lord hath avenged himself. But when the Lord shall have dealt well with my Lord, then remember thine handmaid. And David said to Abigail, Blessed be the Lord God of Israel, which sent thee to this day. And blessed be thy advice, and blessed be thou, which hast kept me this day from coming to shed blood, and from avenging myself with mine own hand. So again, those are examples of trying to lessen the anger, or agitation that people are experiencing. Another commentary on this one. Let's see. We see in this a person who remains calm and speaks without anger and prejudice. A king will listen to and be persuaded. Soft words will have more influence than force. You can break a person's bones and still not convince them, but a soft word is easy to listen to and will be more acceptable. This tells us that patience is a mighty weapon. So again, the example of the tongue having no bone in it, it's the soft words. Verse 16. Hast thou found honey? Eat so much as is sufficient for thee, lest thou be filled therewith and vomit it. In the Promised Land, there was an abundance of honey originally, as there was of other good things. It was the most common form of sweetening back in that day. Its sweetness to the taste would be a temptation to overeat it. It is not forbidden fruit to thee, as it was to Jonathan. Thou mayest eat of it with thanksgiving to God. So there's an example in Samuel, I won't read it, that there was a decree put out basically for Jonathan and his army to not have the honey, to abstain from the honey. We must use all pleasures as we do honey with a check upon our appetite. Honey is to be tasted with the finger end, not with the hollow of the hand. In Proverbs 24:13-14, honey was used as a symbol of wisdom, but it cannot have such a symbolic meaning in this instance, since obviously no one can get too much wisdom. But it may have also been a reference to an illustration to the following verse for 17. But also on this one. They're talking about honey, and obviously, if you can imagine taking a whole thing of honey and putting it in your mouth, right? I mean, how sick would you get? I think of, since we tend to watch kids' cartoons, you think of Winnie the Pooh, right? He's always out there, and he's like, I gotta find that honey, I gotta find that honey. And he's looking around, and then he finally gets it, and what does he do? He always pounds the whole jar of it. He just can't contain himself. He's looked so much, and he finally just eats that whole thing. Then he ends up in that honey coma, right? And he's just like passed out, and he's of no use to anyone. But you think of that too, right? Take even just that simple example. So you're striving, you're looking for something so much, then you finally find this thing, then you engorge yourself on it, and then you're of no use to anyone after that. You've just spent so much time, you finally get there, and you just can't hold yourself back, that you just give in to that temptation so much. There's no reserve there. Gluttony really is kind of what it comes down to. I don't know if you've ever come across, maybe you found some special snack that you find that you really, really like, or some sort of food or something. You're like, I'm going to buy this whole thing. I'm just going to get it all right now because it's just so good. Then you start eating it, and eventually you just become sick of it, right? You become so sick that even the smell of it, like in this verse, just makes you want to vomit because it's just so nasty, so disgusting. But it just kind of speaks to tempering ourselves, right, and holding ourselves back. We want to it's either all or nothing sometimes, and we got to find that balance. We got to find that middle ground. That's pretty much what I had in 16. All right, moving on to 17. Withdraw thy foot from thy neighbor's house, let he be weary of thee, and so hate thee. As fellowship with a neighbor can be very enjoyable, yet too much time spent at his house can cause him to get tired of you. So a parallel is drawn between this and eating too much honey. Not intimacy, but intrusiveness is to be shunned. Almost any two people can be together too much, and so a proper balance is to be maintained between working at home and visiting with friends. So we see in this verse not to wear out welcome with our neighbors. Close friends enjoy each other, but they also they also need to know when it's time to go home, right? So here he's mentioning another pleasure. So the previous verse, honey, a sweet thing being a pleasure, which we must not take too much of, that being visiting friends. It is a piece of civility to visit our neighbors sometimes, to show respect to them and concern for them, and to cultivate and improve mutual acquaintances and love, and that we may both have the satisfaction and advantage of conversation. It is wisdom as well as good manners not to be troublesome to our friends in our visiting them, not to visit too often, nor to stay too long, nor contrive to come only at mealtime, nor make ourselves busy in the affairs of their families. Hereby we make ourselves cheap, mean, and burdensome. Thy neighbor who is thus plagued and haunted by thy visits will be weary of thee and hate thee, and that we will be destructive of friendship, which should have been the improvement of it, not the destructive part. And a couple of kind of phrases. After the third day, fish and company become distasteful. Familiarity breeds contempt. Be not too intimate with any. He that sponges upon his friend loses him. How much better a friend than he is God than any other friend? For we need not withdraw our foot from his house, the throne of his grace. The oftener we come to him, the better and more welcome we are. So on the flip side, we're talking about not wearing out our welcome with friends, but you can never wear out your welcome with God, right? But we like to maybe kind of hang out and party and that sort of thing, right? But how often do we step back and actually take the time we need to with God? Because we can never wear that welcome out. But how often do we do that? Like I said, it's kind of that, I go back to that example of the jar with the heavy things and the light things, you know? The thing on the top, yeah, hang out, party, have a good time, fellowship, all that stuff's all good, but that's the easy thing to do. That's what we want to do. It's the prayer, the reading, all the more important things that kind of sink to the bottom, right? So that one's kind of a little more of a surface verse, but we can take it a little deeper. So don't wear out your neighbor's welcome if you're going over to someone's house after church today. Be weary of them hosting you.
You got a swimming pool, I'll be right over.
There you go, swimming pool. We have a very small one if you want to come over. Very, very small one. All right. Okay, verse 18. A man that beareth false witness against his neighbor is a maul and a sword and a sharp arrow. These items are all instruments of destruction and death, for such is false witness. The maul bruises and breaks, the sword cuts, and the arrow pierces deeply, so that the bad effects of a false witness are extensive, touching not only man's outward reputation, but also his personal character and being. It would be bad enough that a man should bear false witness against a stranger, but to do so to a neighbor is a most heinous sin. Anciently, false witnesses had done unto them what they would have done to others, and had their false witness been believed. And such were not to be pitied, nor any way excused. If such were done today, it would eliminate much evil. And turn to Deuteronomy 19, 15 through 21. 19, 15. All right. One witness shall not rise up against a man for any iniquity or for any sin. In any sin that he sinneth, at the mouth of 2 witnesses or at the mouth of 3 witnesses shall the matter be established. If a false witness rise up against any man to testify against him that which is wrong, then both the men between whom the controversy is shall stand before the Lord, before the priests, and the judges shall be in those days. And the judges shall make delinquent inquisition, and behold, if the witness be a false witness, and hath testified falsely against his brother, then shall ye do unto him as he hath thought to have done unto his brother. So shalt thou put the evil away from among you. And those which remain shall hear and fear, and shall henceforth commit no more any such evil among you. And thine eye shall not pity, but life shall go for life, an eye for an eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. Obviously, that has much symbolic meaning. Back in the day, say, was it Hammurabi's Code of Law, right? Literally was that eye for an eye, hand for a hand type of situation, which obviously is not the case nowadays. But, you put yourself in a situation, I suppose, and someone is bearing the false witness or spreading rumors, just say that, spreading rumors against you or whatever. Do you counteract by then spreading rumors against them as a hand for a hand type of thing? No, you don't. That's not going to be the way you want to deal with it. I mean, so a little further commentary. In this verse is a very destructive person who bears false witness against his neighbor. He is destructive as the reputation of those witnesses are to the body. The sword shows what his cutting words can do. The maul shows how it beats others down with words of falsehoods. And then we see the piercing effect of sharp words as sharp arrows. A person who does these vicious things is more destructive than in any of these weapons. So again, the sword is likened to cutting words. The maul is likened to falsehoods. And then the piercing effect of these sharp words is likened to the sharpness of an arrowhead. So things not to be taken lightly, that's for sure. Let's see. All right, verse 19. Confidence in an unfaithful man in time of trouble is like a broken tooth and a foot out of joint. Often the unfaithfulness of a person is not manifest until the worst possible time, a time of trouble, when he may suddenly manifest his true colors by bearing false witness against a neighbor, and treacherously turns on those who had formerly thought him a friend. Such is likened to broken teeth and disjointed limbs, two very painful ailments, both of which may look perfectly normal yet be extremely painful. We are warned against putting confidence in men, even in men of apparently noble character, for only the Lord is worthy of our full confidence. The best of men are but sinners, who in time of trouble will let us down. And examples of that, Psalms 118, 8 through 9. All right. Psalm 118, 8 and 9. It is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in man. It is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in princes. Pretty simple. Psalms 146 and 3. Put not your trust in princes, nor in the Son of Man, in whom there is no help. So again, just further illustrating that, again, our friends, we always like to think we can't be let down by them, but depending on the situation, when things get tough and the rubber meets the road, are they really going to be there to stand by you, right? And I'm not downplaying friendships or that sort of thing, not by any means. It's the true friendships that come out in that situation, right? Another little note, confidence in a faithful God in times of trouble will not prove thus on him that we may rest on him and dwell at ease. So again, but how often do we not turn to God first in this situation, right? It's happened plenty of times to me or whatever. I don't have a specific example, but I just know that it's happened, right? Something, no matter what it is. Even this morning, so my computer didn't want to turn on at 6 in the morning. I was like, all right, throw it up in the air, whatever. Throw it in the bag. We'll just move on. I was like, all right. I just had to kind of gather myself for a minute. And I was like, oh, well, I was like, maybe this computer will turn on. So I was praying about it. Didn't turn on. Well, maybe there's another message that's trying to be sent there, right? So I go out. I go try to fill the pool up or something because we're having some people over later. Come back. Oh, maybe it's on. No, still didn't turn on. So at that point, I finally say, okay, the computer, it's just not a happening thing right now. So I'm still not sure exactly why it didn't turn on and what the reason behind that was. Still trying to figure that out. But, that's fine. We just have to improvise sometimes. Let's see. We should be hard-pressed to depend upon a foot that was out of joint to get you anywhere. When you're stepping on it, it would hurt so badly that you would not be able to walk. And obviously, you would not be able to eat because of a broken tooth, because it would be a painful situation to depend upon someone who was unfaithful. So those are, a lot of these couple of verses, they're pretty plain. They're pretty plainly stated, right? It's pretty obvious where they're trying to go, what they're getting at. I don't know if anyone's ever had a broken foot or a broken tooth, or even you think of other, if you've had a torn rotator cuff or that sort of thing. That's housed within. You think that the arm looks fine, that there's nothing wrong with it. But in reality, you have major issues that need surgery. But looking at it on the surface, it seems like no big deal, nothing's wrong. How often do we seek that out with each other, right? Within a body or with our friends? How often do we come in and say, "Oh, how you doing?" "Oh, I'm doing fine." Are you really doing fine? I'm guilty of that, I'm not a big hugger. I'm not a big, seeking people out sort of thing. That's just me. That's the way I was kind of raised, I guess. My dad wasn't a big "I love you" person and that sort of thing. So that's kind of been more ingrained in me. But I've had to kind of come out of my shell as I've done that with my own kids. And it's funny, I hear my dad will say "I love you" more to my own kids than it feels like he ever did to me. But that's just, that's just that's kind of a generational thing, I think, right? I can't speak to that for sure, but I know my dad, he was raised that way with his own father. He wasn't a big hug you, I love you type of person, all mushy, that sort of thing. That's just not the way that they were. And so that kind of carried through kind of with us and my brothers. And I don't fault him for that. I don't look down upon him for that in any way. That's just the way he was. But I'm trying to act a little differently in that way, especially with my own kids, because I feel that that's pretty important. All right. Does anyone have anything on any of these verses at this point? I know I'm kind of winging it here a little bit. I'll be completely honest, but that's fine. All right.
I was just thinking back to the analogy you had with the clouds, and how it's a really good analogy, and yet it's really completely out of our control. But us being a false anything is within our control, And I think so often it takes us really doing the hard things or making the sacrifices, or even in a scenario where you may feel like you're standing alone, but choosing to be true to who you are or to who God has called you to be, And so instead of someone hoping for a false promise, like if you promise something, stick to it, even if that's hard for you. But it's kind of up to you and your choice, right? Like at least the weather, we can pray and everything, but I don't think we're going to move God's hand unless he chooses. But in our own lives, I think that we really have a choice over how we behave and whether we speak truth in life and whether we stick to it or whether we're that false, person. So.
All right. Go ahead. Go for it.
Well, I just thought of a couple things, Chris. One was back in 13, was about a faithful messenger. I think sometimes we got to understand you got multiple things you got to harvest, okay? You got a master and you got a messenger. And the important thing is getting the harvest done. The important thing is who's in charge. But you can never look down on the job of being a messenger. If you're just a messenger, you do it unto the Lord. You do it with all your being in it. Doesn't matter what the quality of your job is. Just do it as unto the Lord. And it begins to be a blessing to those who you're involved with in that. And the other one was about the honey. I know you covered Winnie the Pooh and who's the who and whatever. But to me, it's, do you ever come up against somebody that they're so sweet, they're sickening?
Sure.
Yeah,
You can see right through it usually.
yeah. They're just, they're just full of mush, and there's nothing real behind it. It's learned behavior. It's not from the heart. It's just learned behavior, and sometimes, and I think this is really what this whole thing of the Proverbs is about. It's about behavior patterns, because if you go back to the beginning, it's how we're supposed to live, how we're supposed to act, I think all of us could sweeten up a little bit, but on the other hand, somebody who's just so sweet they're sickening is beyond our ability to take, at least mine anyway. So
That's a tough balance, right? There's that philosophy of the hard love, and then but you can be too hard at the same time. So it's trying to find that balance, right? And that balance is with each individual is different in that way, right? There's some people, I think back to my days in college or that sort of thing and running, and I always felt like my coach was a very, very laid-back individual. It was just kind of, all right, this is what we're going to do for our workouts and that sort of thing. Go through your workouts and you'll be at the level you want to be at, type of deal. But to me, I felt like in some ways maybe that was a little of a disservice to me personally, because I felt like, you hear some of these people, there's these really hard-nosed coaches, and they're going to be in your face, and they're not in your face to demean you, but they're in your face to try to fire you up and really try to get the most out of you. And in some ways, I feel like if I had a little more of someone who was like that maybe I could have even achieved a little bit more. But on the same side, some people aren't like that. They're going to take it completely out of context. They're going to turn off, and they're going to turn their back to that individual and say, why would I want to perform for that person? So it's a matter of trying to find out how each person operates and then how you have to deal with them on an individual basis. And that's a whole nother deep, we go through these management things and take these disc profiles and all this stuff that says, this is how you are. And it's scary how accurate they are, to be quite honest, by going through and answering all these multiple choice questions and what your answer would be in a certain situation. It's scary how accurate it is, but it tells you how you are, and then also it tells you how you react with other people and what their individual characteristics are. Like I'm very opposite of what Karen is. I'm an I think it is, or whatever, like right down the middle. And under the disc, like I'm more of an influencer, and Karen is more of a D. She's direct to the point. Just get this thing done. I got no time for talking about it. Let's just move on. And I'm thinking more, how's it going to affect this person? How's it going to affect that person? Let's get together as a team and collaborate and that sort of thing and come up with an answer. But it's very interesting how you have to take that into consideration as you deal with people and as you look at people, especially at a management level, or not even a management level. Think about it within your own family. How many of your kids are totally different than other ones, right? I say Zoe's a spitting image of Karen and Jaden's more like me. But that's just, you see those different characteristics within your own family, right? And you have to figure out how to deal with that. So you can have it as close to the vest as your family, or as more in the workplace, or in a church setting, right? We're all different, but we all bring different components together, which is good, it's exciting to see that and see how people operate and function, and then try to take a step back and hopefully have people realize where we need to come up, right? That's the desire for all of us, right? Where we should all come up and just continue to make this place function in the way that it needs to be. I don't know. That's just something, too, for me personally. We're going through kind of a transition at work where you've got the ownership level and then the next group kind of coming behind them. And there's so many parallels I see within this church to my own workplace, And so I just kind of sit back and kind of take some of it in and try to see where the bits and pieces are and how things are falling into place and that sort of thing, and just try to see how that vets itself out and figure out who needs a push maybe in one direction and where people need to go and function. But anyways, thank you for bearing with me this week. And I was a little all over the place, but all right.